coming up on Dialogue Weekend. Voting in Iran's presidential election has ended. What impact will the result have on the region and beyond? China's national-level carbon trading market is ready to launch by the end of the month. How does it work and how can it help deliver a green economy? And this week's newsmaker. Now on Dialogue Weekend.
Welcome to Dialogue Weekend. I'm CGTN. Iran is to have a new president as elections just concluded. According to preliminary results announced by the Interior Ministry on Saturday, Ebrahim Raisi is to be Iran's next president after a panel gave him this unassailable lead. He will replace incumbent Hassan Rouhani, a relative moderate who has served the maximum 2 terms. So what challenges will Iran's new president face with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and sanctions from the U.S.? What's the future of the Iranian nuclear deal, and how will the new president balance domestic and international relations? To find out more, I'm joined by Professor John Gung from University of International Business and Economics, and Gambar Nandari, a freelance journalist and political commentator. So welcome to the show, gentlemen. So Gambar, I will start with you, like Raisi, Mr. Raisi. So some describe him as from the conservative camp or even hardliner. Tell us, what about his ideas in terms of running the government, running the country?
Well, that's a good question. If you're a conservative in Iran, 3 things you need to make sure that is going to happen if you become a president. That is a religious pilgrimage or tourism to Iraq, Syria, and of course, Saudi Arabia. The conservatives are in love with these religious sites and pilgrims. So make no mistake, the first priority for the government of Mr. Raisi and his cabinet will be to normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. So a lot is at stake for the conservative. They have a huge support camp. Many conservative supporters voted this time when so many reformist supporters try to distance themselves from the ballot boxes. So if they want to deliver on their promises, they need to open up the gates of tourism and religious pilgrimage to Iraq, Syria, and of course, Saudi Arabia. So that is a priority.
Mm-hmm. What about the domestic priorities, in particular the economy here?
Well, that's a good question. Again, we have serious problems with the economy because of sanctions, because of corruption, and of course, mismanagement of the economy and national resources. The government over the past 8 years or so failed to deliver on its promises, including lifting of sanctions and improving the livelihoods of ordinary Iranians, especially the middle classes. We now have in Iran, you are either poor or rich. There is no middle class anymore because of the runaway prices, the high unemployment rate, and of course the drop or dip in GDP growth. So a lot is at the stakes again with regard to economy. When it comes to the new government, he needs to do something about it. Otherwise we will see again lower turnout in 4 years' time.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, you're an economist. If you look at this today's Iran, because of the crippling US sanctions, which had been there for decades, for years, and now you have this pandemic. I mean, even for a country without sanctions, you would be struggling probably to recover your economy from the pandemic, which is still there. How challenging the situation is for the new president? John.
Yeah, I think the primary task is to reach some kind of agreement with the United States, and I think there's some report indicating that the agreement is very imminent. I think it's extremely important that Iran, stops sponsoring some of these activities in other countries that pose danger to Israel. And I think this is the primary reason why the United States has been imposing sanctions on Iran. And I hope something can be done in that direction. And I think this newly elected president sort of indicated that he wants to go back to the original nuclear agreement. So I think there's a hope that some kind of agreement will be reached and that these activities will have to stop.
Mm-hmm. Here is, the issue, like people talk about this turnout, Gambar. I know, like, if you look at the elections, now with the pandemic, which is still ravaging, on one hand, it's understandable. Turnout won't be that high. Even in the U.S., if you look at their presidential election, I guess, like, in 1996, it's about 50%. In 1996, actually 49% without the pandemic. Even last year, 2020, which was really contested presidential election, okay, there is a 62% turnout. That's pretty high, according to their standards. But here, does it have anything to do with legitimacy in terms of turnout here?
No, I don't think that is the case. As you just mentioned, this pandemic has caught the whole world off guard. It's not just Iran. We also failed to control the pandemic. Except for China and a couple of other countries, the world is struggling to contain the virus or to restore the economic activities. We are seeing so many people furloughed. Even in England, they have refused to open up the economy. Why? Because the pandemic keeps coming through different stages and waves. And Iran is no exception. So as you just mentioned, Iran was already suffering from sanctions, and the pandemic just more than doubled Iran's economic and social or cultural woes. So hopefully this time around, as you know, the negotiations are still underway thanks to China and Russia in Vienna, and hopefully when the sanctions are lifted and there is a deal reached, then the international community would be able to deal with Iran economically and financially, and the SWIFT banking system will be open again so that Iran could get back to normal business with the international community. But until that happens, as you just mentioned, the low turnout is the reason we have so many disappointment and frustrations we see witness in Iran. We know that the government doesn't have the support of the 100% of the voters. Only half of the voters turned out, and most of them were conservative supporters. The reformists stayed away from ballot boxes. But if the government manages to deliver on its economic promises, fixes the economy, signs some kind of nuclear deal with America, and has the sanctions lifted, definitely for the next round of elections, Mr. Raisi and his cabinet are going to have a much bigger support camp when they run for presidency in 4 years' time.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, of course, if you look at Iran, external relations is very important, as you mentioned, regionally, but also relationship with the U.S. and China, Russia. For example, China and Iran signed this 25-year deal, large deal of infrastructure and trade and other sectors over there. Right. But if you want to go ahead with all those deals and agreements, one thing probably will facilitate the development is really about the lifting of sanctions from the U.S. side, and then it's about this Iranian nuclear deal, having the U.S. rejoin the deal, and both sides will reach a new agreement basically, and then the sanctions will be lifted, and then development probably will go ahead. Now you have a new president who is considered as a conservative. Will that somehow affect this ongoing negotiation between Washington and Tehran?
Well, I think even though he's coming from a very conservative background, I think he serves in some judicial cleric role. But I think he previously indicated that he's actually for going back to the original Iran nuclear deal. That means that he's willing to negotiate. I need to point out, as you said, that lifting the sanction is absolutely necessary for Iranian's economy to recover. Without that, it's just impossible. Iran's primary, I would say, overwhelming majority of its exports is relying on oil exports. China being a large oil purchasing country from Iran, and with this sanction imposed, it's just crippling its economy. So no matter what Iran's government does, I think at the very fundamental level, it has to reach an agreement with the United States and other powers who are parties to this agreement and have the sanction lifted. I think this is the most important thing. Without the sanction lifted, there will be no future for Iran's economy.
Mm-hmm. So Gamera, how optimistic are you? Now we have a new president, but at the same time, of course, President Rouhani will stay in office until August. So during this time, the negotiation obviously will continue over there. And also, the new president, he did talk about, his idea about this nuclear deal. He said he, will be realistic and pragmatic. So that gave a lot of people some hope about the continuation of the foreign policy toward the U.S., let's say. And also regionally, do you think the president probably will be even a stronger position, exactly because he's from the conservative camp, to deal with regional partners?
Absolutely. The conservatives are now controlling the parliament, the judiciary, and of course now the executive branch of the government. And they all have the full backing and support of the establishment and of course the leader. All these currents and elements are working hand in hand, and they are now united more than ever to resolve the nuclear dispute with the West. And at the same time, they want to normalize ties with Iran's Arab neighbors, especially Saudi Arabia. We know that negotiations are still ongoing between Iranian and Saudi representatives to come to some kind of understanding and rapprochement with regard to regional issues. So Iran is not only going to resolve its dispute with the United States and sign a new nuclear deal, Iran is also going to normalize its relations with the regional countries, because the conservatives are pretty much insisting on this new change in policy and of course in foreign policy. So make no mistake, the new government has the backing of the leadership and the parliament and of course the judiciary, as I told you, and they all support Iran signing this new nuclear deal and normalizing its relations with Saudi Arabia. Because let's not forget that the wars are still ongoing in places like Yemen and Syria. The region and the West needs Iran to end these unnecessary conflicts. So this is a win-win situation for all sides involved, and as long as the tensions between Iran and its neighbors are resolved, I can tell you with 100% certainty that the wars in Iraq and Yemen, in Syria and Yemen, are also going to come to an end under this new president, Mr. Raisi.
Seems pretty optimistic over there. John, what do you look at this relationship with Washington? Some people say, if you have a reformist president, it's easier probably to improve relationship with the West, including Washington. But look, it's exactly under the President Rouhani's terms, the U.S. withdrew from the deal and reimposed sanctions on Iran.
Well, I'm very happy to hear my colleagues' very optimistic forecast. I certainly hope things will go that way. But I guess we have to wait and see. But I think one thing that's probably working in Iran's favor is that we have a new president in the United States, in White House, which takes a very different position as opposed to the previous president, President Trump, especially with respect to Iran's nuclear deal, with respect to the Palestinian issue. So things are a little bit different here. And we have to wait and see whether Iran is willing to take this window of opportunity to reach some kind of a peace with its neighbors, reestablish, as your guest has said, reestablish diplomatic relationships with Saudi Arabia, and as well as reach some kind of a rapprochement with the United States.
Well, now we turn to China's national carbon trading system, which is due to start at the end of this month. How will the carbon trading system work, and how can it help China reach its goal of carbon neutrality as soon as possible? For more, we are joined by Wu Changhua, Executive Director of the Professional Association for China's Environment. So welcome to the show, Changhua.
Thank you.
For the public, like a carbon trading system sounds very, very professional, very technical. Tell us, what is kind of system is this?
Okay, the bigger picture is that in alignment with China's national carbon intensity reduction targets, which is about 65% reduction by 2030 over the 2005 level. So that's the bigger picture in terms of peaking China's emissions before 2030. In that context, And the government kicked off the national carbon trading market this year, and with a particular focus on the electricity sector, because 43% of China's electricity is generated from coal. And power sector overall in China contributes about 40% of China's overall carbon emissions there. So that's the reason why we start with the coal, the electricity sector there. How the market works, basically China decided to set an intensity target, we call it a benchmark factor, using that as a moving block, meaning that the target, the intensity target or the benchmark factor will continue to evolve, to improve actually over the decade, using that as a major benchmark to drive power facilities actually to invest in more cost-effective solutions there, such as energy efficiency as well as switching to renewable energy as much as possible. So the current 2021 becomes the first, we call it a compliance period, which the government has decided to provide the companies a certain amount of allowances, which potentially free. Beyond that, actually, companies have to invest basically in technology solutions and management and efficiency improvement, so that they will be able to, one, of course, to save the cost, because if they fail, they have to pay more. In the meantime, actually, they will be able to sell carbon credits if they manage to succeed actually in terms of reducing, reductions more than their peers at this moment. So in that context, China now this year is expected to have a carbon market at the size of $800 million. And with the 2,225 power facilities actually covered, and that will continue to grow. So by the end of this decade, the market is expected to provide $25 billion. That's going to be used as a tremendous source of finance to, for companies to invest in clean energy revolution, which is the top agenda for the government at this moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, this program obviously has been tested basically over the past 10 years, starting 2011 over there. Why did it take so long a time to build such a system?
Well, carbon market is a very complicated landscape. We've been learning from EU ETS, which is the first and the largest carbon market over the last decade. Actually, EU started in 2005. And so because this is a carbon, this is going to be a product, financial product on the market. So we have to make sure we have laws, regulations as a foundation, a solid foundation. In the meantime, we need to have the infrastructure, the governance and institutions together, including registry, trading, as well as the verification, even the settlements, account the settlements there. So it's a complex system. It takes at least 10 years. I think China will continue to improve. At least now we have about a 10-year experience actually to build that capacity infrastructure together, so that the country is ready to move forward with its first industry-focused carbon market, which is the electricity sector this year.
Okay, let's bring in Professor John Gung. John, previously the trading system was seen as toothless, but now some analysts describe it as a giant step, and nothing of this scale has been tried or implemented in the world before, end quote here. So how significant is the system?
Yeah, well, I think, I totally agree that it takes time and effort to establish something like this. This is a very thinly traded market. It's not like we call it a market, but it's not anything like the stock market, for example. And also the enforcement, I think, is very important. I think your host talks about the importance of how to verify things, how to regulate things. So these concrete steps have to be in place so that the contract can be credible. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time, and finally we've come to this stage that looks like real trading is starting to take place. But having said that, I would say that the significance of all this is, all of this is that eventually China is still very much far away from reaching our target. As President Xi has committed to. I mean, look at the carbon emission curve. It's a tall order to reach that kind of a carbon neutrality target. So you know, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of money actually to reach that goal. So hopefully, you know, this trading mechanism would provide the financial incentive for companies involved to cut carbon, to reduce carbon emission, especially the electricity generation sector. So I think this is a one step in the right direction, and we'll see how far we can reach being facilitated by this new mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Well, Changhua, obviously, as John mentioned about, you know, there's still reliance on the coal-fired plants for electricity for China. And, you know, international experts have expressed the doubts, you know, whether China will be able to, say, peak its carbon emission like in 2030. So how do you address this concern?
Well, I definitely agree with John. It's a very complicated, very daunting challenge for China, literally to switch its energy infrastructure and also the fuel structure actually from fossil fuel dependence towards renewable clean energy, you know, foundation. So yes, it's going to be very, very difficult. But the carbon market actually is just one of the policy instruments to contribute to drive the acceleration of investment, in particular in alternatives. On one side, of course, is improving efficiency. If we continue to rely on coal, we have to make sure it's a carbon capture, use, you know, and storage ready. We do not emit more emissions, carbons actually into the atmosphere. And on the other side, you know, just investing in alternatives. And plenty of technologies available now, including renewable energies, including energy storage and even hydrogen coming on board. So in that context, actually, so carbon market is you know, the important policy tool to price carbon, basically. So from that context and also the dynamics actually the country has already, you know, entering, I feel confident that this decade will be marking the end of, you know, peaking the coal consumption in China. President Xi Jinping committed back in April during the White House Climate Action Summit that China will start to reduce coal emissions at least, you know, around the 2026, meaning coal consumption peaking literally is around the corner, right, in the next few years. Mm-hmm. And the carbon market, you know, will be a very important tool actually and driver to achieve that.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, obviously you see a mixed picture here. On one hand, now we have some progress, obviously, in the carbon trading system in terms of renewable energy. For example, China, in terms of the patent for renewable energy, China basically, you know, 1/3 of the patents come from China. And if you production, manufacturing of a lot of like solar panels, you know, batteries, electric cars, China is number one. So you do see there are encouraging signs in terms of alternative energy over there. What do you make of it, the goal 2030 and ultimately 2060 carbon neutrality? Are you, you know, as optimistic as Changhua is?
Well, let's give our government the benefit of the doubt. I think, you know, every time that the Chinese government is determined to do something and announce publicly, they usually keep their promise. So, you know, I'm fairly optimistic in that regard. And also, you know, you have to look at the actions that have been taken by the Chinese government. As you have said, that we've been trying to reduce coal consumption for electricity generation. You know, you look at the solar panel sales data. I mean, it's just going through the roof right now. And also, China is investing heavily in nuclear. I think this is something that probably many people talk about. Actually, we actually are indeed investing quite heavily in that sector as well. And then you're pitching the wind power and hydropower. So I think overall, you know, I would expect that coal consumption in China's energy, at least in the utility sector, coal consumption is going to be greatly reduced. I think right now we are already below 60%. I think it's like 55, 57%, mm-hmm. I think. And I think within 2 years we'll be below 50%. So, you know, that's a very significant reduction right there. And you also mentioned electric cars. I think in that sector, China is #1 right now. Look at the number of electric cars running on streets in China. Incidental, I can tell you one story. Last night I was going to a family's dinner, and we actually the host is actually driving a electric car from China, exported from China to Israel. So I think Chinese
optimistic
electric cars
note,
are
let's
really doing very
leave it
well
there for now and take a look at this week's newsmaker. Kenneth Kaunda, Zambia's founding president and a champion of African nationalism, who spearheaded the fight to end white minority rule across southern Africa, has died at the age of 97. To commemorate his deeds and contribution to China-Zambia diplomacy and relationship, we have development economist Paddy Sianga-Newson, who is from Zambia, joining us from via Skype. So Paddy, welcome to the show. Tell us, how Kaunda is remembered in your nation. He's a founding father. He has been there, basically all the time since the founding of this nation.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And maybe just to start off by appreciating the wealth of messages that are flowing from across the globe. Because I think when the passing of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda was announced, I think as Zambians we felt it was much our loss. And I think we have been overwhelmed by the outpouring support that has come not just from our neighboring countries that we've worked with, but even as far as China. So very privileged to be here and to join you and share my reflections. And like you have said, it's a great loss, not just for the nation or for the SADC region, but it goes beyond because Dr. Kenneth Kaunda was not just a Zambian freedom fighter, but he was really a freedom fighter that was looking to liberate many countries around the region from colonization. And he was a believer in justice. He was a dear friend. He was an important figure for many African countries. And throughout his reign as president, and even after that, you could see those friendships maintained even beyond the continent, all the way also to China. And I think, indeed he has left a gap, and, he will be greatly remembered, as can be seen from the outpouring of messages on TV screens, on social media, as well as mourners who are even, gathering at his home and trying to access his family, even in the midst of growing numbers in this COVID pandemic. So that's just a demonstration of what a great man I think he was to many. But I think, another thing we shouldn't forget is that he was a passionate and charismatic leader. He took onto a stage and he took on to many challenges, whether it was, looking at, freedom within the Zambian context, or bringing different tribes together in order for us to work on to nation building, or if he was looking to, further interests of decolonization in other countries. So he was very fearless and very stern on his beliefs. And that really came from what, he coined around humanism, which was a bringing together of not just Christian values, African values, but also social values, and trying to have this blend sort of in one pot and making people have the spirit of Ubuntu, as it may be. And I think, I think many of us have heard him sing very passionately the famous Tiende Pamosi in one of Zambian languages, and it's sang in many different languages. And this kind of spirit that he has wasn't just a song, but it's something that, he walked fearlessly in his fight, whether it was for South Africa, Zimbabwe, Angola, Mozambique, many other countries.
Paddy,
that remember
as you said, he's also fondly remembered in China. He's remembered as the first politician putting forward the idea of always a friend between China, Zambia, China, Africa, basically. 30 seconds. So what do you see about his contribution to this relationship here?
Well, as an all-weather friend, I think it's important to sort of think about China and Zambia having this a very long-standing friendship that goes, very far back to where, Kaunda was really one of those
Sorry,
African
we have to
leaders
stop there, Patty. But with that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also watch us on the CGTN app or on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. You can find me on Twitter, Xu Qinduo in one word. Thanks for watching. See you next time.